You wanted to explore the world of ghosts, so uh, consider this your crash course in all things spectral. We're diving into those Wikipedia articles on ghosts and ghost lore you sent, and trust me, things are about to get fascinating.
What's intriguing about ghosts is that there isn't one simple definition. It's a concept that's constantly evolving, shifting, molded by culture, history, even personal
It's
beliefs.
like pinning down a shadow, right?
Mhm.
So how do we even begin to untangle this ghostly mystery? Where do we even start?
Hmm. A good starting point is the word ghost itself. It originates from the Old English gast, which had a much broader meaning. Think breath, blast, or even essence. It was less about a spectral figure and more about a life force.
So imagine our ancestors seeing breath on a chilly day and connecting that to the spirit, the essence of life leaving the body.
Exactly. It gives us a glimpse into how they perceive the soul, something intangible yet ever present, and that connection between the soul, the afterlife, and what lingers after death, well, that takes us all the way back to ancient civilizations.
Like the Egyptians, with their elaborate rituals for the afterlife.
Absolutely. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, for instance, doesn't depict the afterlife as some separate ethereal realm. Instead, it shows people in the afterlife engaging in activities they enjoyed while alive, even wearing the same clothes.
So even in death, you got to keep up appearances. But that's really interesting. It shows how the Egyptians saw the afterlife as a continuation of life, not necessarily a complete break.
Precisely. It underscores their belief in the soul's continued journey. Now, if we shift our focus to the ancient Greeks, we see a different type of ghost story emerging.
Oh, how so? Weren't they all about grand myths and heroes battling monsters? Did ghosts even make the cut?
They certainly did, though their role evolved over time. In Homeric epics, ghosts are like fleeting whispers, pale echoes of their former selves. Take Patroclus' ghost visiting Achilles in the Iliad, more of a sorrowful apparition than an active player in the story.
Okay, so less Casper the Friendly Ghost, more like a fleeting memory.
Exactly. However, by the 5th century BC, Greek ghosts started taking on more agency. They could interact with the living, influence events, even seek revenge. Think of vengeful spirits guarding tombs or demanding proper burial rites. It's during this time that we encounter the story of Athenodorus, a philosopher who rented a house in Athens that just happened to be, well, haunted.
You know, for a philosopher, that seems like a risky rental agreement. What happened? Did you try to debate the ghost into leaving?
Athenodorus was a Stoic, known for his calmness, so instead of fleeing, he followed the ghost, which appeared as a shackled figure. And this spectral house guest led him directly to the spot where they found a skeleton still bound in chains.
Talk about a renovation project. But this Athenodorus, he sounds like he had nerves of steel.
And a strong stomach, you'd have to imagine. But his story speaks to a key aspect of ghost lore, the idea that ghosts often have unfinished business, a need for resolution. It's a theme that carries over into the Middle Ages, though with a decidedly different flavor.
Things got a bit more, shall we say, religious. I'm picturing less chains rattling and more sins to atone for.
Exactly. The medieval period saw the rise of purgatory, a sort of waiting room for the soul, where they could purify themselves before entering heaven. Ghosts, then, were often seen as souls trapped in purgatory, seeking release from their earthly transgressions.
So less about seeking revenge and more about working off that karmic debt.
Precisely. And the punishments were often tailored to the sins. There's a tale of a ghost forced to eat his own tongue for a lifetime of verbal abuse. Another recounts a man condemned to wear a cloak for eternity because he refused to give it to someone in need, a weighty reminder of his miserliness. Literally.
It's fascinating how these stories reflect the anxieties and beliefs of their time. You can practically feel the weight of those societal expectations, even in the afterlife.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? The idea that ghosts, these intangible beings, are bound by such earthly concerns. But as we move into the 19th and 20th centuries, we see a shift once again.
Less fire and brimstone, more table tapping and seances.
Exactly. The rise of spiritualism during this period marked a resurgence of interest in communicating with the dead. Instead of fearing ghosts, people sought them out, hoping to bridge the gap between the living and the hereafter.
It's like those Victorian era folks were trying to send the afterlife a text message. Was this just a Western thing, or were other cultures getting in on the ghost hunting action?
Oh, the belief in spirits and the afterlife is about as universal as it gets. Every culture has its own unique take on ghosts, each one reflecting their particular beliefs and anxieties.
Okay, so let's take a trip around the world ghost style. What kind of spooky encounters can we expect?
Well, in Scotland, we encounter the Green Ladies, sometimes benevolent, sometimes vengeful spirits, often associated with nature and fertility. Some scholars even connect them to the Glaistig of Scottish folklore, a creature with one human foot and one goat's hoof, known for both her beauty and her dangerous nature.
A ghost with a hoof. Now that's a visual. What about other parts of the world?
If we venture to Ireland, we might hear the chilling cries of the banshee, a harbinger of death often depicted as a woman with long flowing hair and a sorrowful wail that sends shivers down the spine. But unlike vengeful spirits, the banshee's cry is a warning, a supernatural heads up that death is approaching.
A spooky premonition, delivered with a side of goosebumps. Makes you wonder why certain cultures have such specific types of ghosts, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It speaks to the power of storytelling and how we use it to grapple with complex emotions. Take the Abiku of Yoruba tradition in Nigeria. This is a spirit often portrayed as a child that is said to die and be reborn repeatedly, causing immense grief for the living family.
That's heartbreaking. It's almost as if these stories reflect a very real fear of infant mortality, especially during times when such things were tragically common.
Exactly. And it highlights how ghost stories aren't just about spooky encounters, but about processing grief, loss, and the mysteries of life and death.
So it's about finding meaning in the face of the unknown.
In a way, yes. And this brings us to another intriguing aspect of ghost lore, the idea that certain places are more likely to be haunted than others.
You mean like those classic haunted hotspots, abandoned hospitals, old asylums, battlefields, places where history seems to seep from the walls.
Exactly. These places are often saturated with strong emotions: fear, sadness, anger, despair. They've witnessed events that leave a mark, not just on the physical space, but perhaps on some unseen realm as well.
It's like the very air is thick with the weight of those past events. Makes you wonder if our emotions can actually leave an imprint on a place.
It's a compelling thought, isn't it? Take old college campuses, for example. Many are said to be haunted, with stories whispered through generations of students.
Oh, absolutely. Those grand old buildings, steeped in history, practically beg for a good ghost story. But why campuses in particular? What makes them such fertile ground for spooky tales?
Think about it. These places are full of young people on the cusp of adulthood, transitioning from one phase of life to another. It's a time of heightened emotions, of exploring new ideas and confronting anxieties about the future.
And what better way to cope with those anxieties than by sharing spooky stories? It's like a rite of passage, a way to bond with classmates and connect with the history of the place.
Precisely. Ghost stories, in a way, allow us to tap into that shared human experience, that fascination with the unknown that transcends time and place.
It's like those ghost stories become like woven into the place itself, part of the campus.
Exactly, and that speaks to a broader point about, well, why we're so drawn to these tales, why they continue to resonate with us even in our modern technology-driven world.
So what's the takeaway here? If we can explain away some ghostly encounters as, I don't know, residual energy or psychological phenomena, does that mean ghosts aren't real?
That depends. I mean, how do you even define real? The human mind is incredibly complex. We're still unraveling the mysteries of consciousness, memory, perception.
Right.
So when someone reports a ghostly encounter, are they just, misinterpreting sensory data or tapping into some collective unconscious? Or are they genuinely interacting with something beyond our current understanding? Those are questions we're still grappling with.
It's like that old saying, I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. Except in this case, it's ghosts. But seriously, though, this whole exploration has me thinking, maybe the most compelling aspect of ghost lore isn't about proving or disproving the existence of ghosts at all.
I agree with that. It's more about the human element, the need to understand our place in the world, to find meaning in the face of uncertainty. Ghost stories, whether we interpret them literally or metaphorically, they provide a framework for exploring those big questions, the kind that have haunted us since, well, the dawn of time.
It's about confronting those universal fears, the fear of the unknown, the fear of death, the fear of what might be lurking just beyond our perception.
Precisely. And in doing so, we learn as much about ourselves, about our hopes and anxieties, as we do about the ghosts themselves.
So the next time you hear a floorboard creak in the night, or feel a chill for no apparent reason, instead of dismissing it as, well, I don't know, just the wind, maybe take a moment to consider the possibilities.
Perhaps there's a story there waiting to be heard, a story that connects us to something larger than ourselves, to the mysteries that have captivated humanity for centuries.
And who knows? Maybe those stories can teach us a thing or two about ourselves along the way. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep an open mind.